Thank you, sir. This Ram Nem Zayin with base, continuing with the halachas of Gerim. And a little bit different here, we're talking about an Eved. So we had early in the Brisa that I spoke about the whole protocol about how to make a ger, how to come the conversion process. And over there it said that he's supposed to be Makabel Mitzvahs. The last thing that it said was about even in the mikvah when he's second time, when they first accept him, so they ask him if he realizes what he's getting into, and they tell him some of the mitzvahs, some of the punishments, and if he agrees, so then they circumcise him, and then they wait till he gets healed, and then they immerse him. And by the immersion also, it says 2 Tamid Chachamim. The Gemara changes to 3 Tamid Chachamim. They are by the mikvah also, and by the actual immersion also, he's Makabel Mitzvahs again. And then the Brisa said Echad Ger Bechad Eved Meshukra, which means that when Eved Kanani is becoming freed, now he becomes the status of a Jew. So by that, he also has to immerse again. And now it sounds like at the immersion also he has to be Makabel Mitzvahs. And that's going to be the Gemara Sugya now. Is that true that Eved Meshukra also has to be Makabel Mitzvahs? So on the first wide line, Mem Zayin Amud Beis. That doesn't say so with Perish. It doesn't say that either. So that's going to be the issue. Because the more things when it says by Eved Meshukra, when you're freeing an Eved, that also you do the same thing. Echad Ger Echad Eved Meshukra, that also means he has to be Makabel Mitzvahs. And the more is Nesakasha that by Eved Meshukra, when you're freeing an Eved, it says in the Brisa you don't have to. For a minute, but Med Vamamum Beger, Avol Eved Meshukra ain't Soch Lekabel. That's the more Kasha. And on our Brisa it says that Eved Meshukra, freeing an Eved, is the same process as a Ger, which the more things means also as far as Kabbalah mitzvahs, he has to again accept upon himself mitzvahs. And there were other Brisa says he doesn't have to. Eved Meshukra does not have to accept upon himself mitzvahs. Of course, as he was an Eved Kanani, he was Mechayiv mitzvahs already. He was Chayiv mitzvahs like an Isha. But now that he's going to become a free man, he's going to become like a regular Jew. He's Chayiv in all mitzvahs.
How do you know he's going to keep the mitzvahs? What's to say that he's going to go there?
Okay, that's another question also. But the Gemara understands that he only, at this point, the Gemara understands that he cannot do it against his will, only if he agrees. And then the Gemara is asking that if that's the question, does he have to be Makabel Mitzvahs or not? That seems to be part of the question. If you need his acceptance, that means that you're not doing it against his will, only if he agrees. If it means against his will, it means that you can make him Jewish. It's possible to make him Jewish, and maybe you can do it against his will. That's what we're going to see the sugya right away. Rav Sheshes, third one line. Rav Sheshes lo kasha. Har b'shem ben Allah zahar rabbanon. The Gemara found the machlokas about this point about slavery. An Eved Kanani status, is it made against his will or not? The Tanya of it talks about his Yefas Torah, and that's Parshas Kisei. The beginning of Parshas Kisei talks about a Yefas Torah that Am Yisrael goes to war, and somebody in the captive, there's a beautiful woman, is a mutter to have relations with over there. So it says that he could take. It is permissible to take a woman. She's a Goyish woman, and it says that there's a process of how to do it, and it says we're going to see some more of it tonight. That he gives her a month. Also, she shaves her hair and her fingernails. There seems to be minabel that she should become disgusting, not that he should want. And if afterwards he still wants, so then he can have relations with her. So he has to wait 30 days. It says he has to wait to he has to wait 30 days.
And initially, by the comments allowed to take her?
Doesn't talk about it over here. It's not over here. Here doesn't talk about it.
I always thought that he gets like one time that he
also it doesn't talk about it over here. There's not the sugya over here, but it says that he has to wait 30 days. In order for this process of taking a fast Torah, he has to wait 30 days. So the Brisa says there's a way that he could avoid the 30 days. The Brisa says if she agrees to become a Gioris, so then she can go to the mikveh right away, become a Gioris, and then she's a regular Jewish woman, and he marries her, and he can have relations right away. It's only if she doesn't want to. He's not going through the route of becoming a Jew, just that she's going to be a Yefas Torah. So then there's a permission to do it with a wait of 30 days. But if she chooses, she agrees to become Jewish, so then she could convert, and then they could have relations right away.
It's so different than what we know about conversion, because you're not supposed to convert.
Right. It doesn't say over here that it doesn't say what her motivation is. But if after she's captured, she would accept Judaism, so then he can have relations with her right away. She's going to be a regular Jewish woman, and then he's going to marry her. We had the Gemara before in the beginning about Taftes Zayin. Also over there it talks about what we deter if we investigate if there's an ulterior motive. But over there we pass, and even if there was, it's still a good conversion. The problem nowadays with the conversion is not so much the ulterior motive as much as that they're not Makabel Mitzvahs. They don't know what Judaism means. They think Judaism means that I identify with the Jewish people. That's not enough. and not Israel, not the Jewish people, you have to want to do the mitzvahs. That's the problem with the conversions of nowadays. But anyway, here it says that if she agrees to convert, so then it wouldn't have to be the 30-day wait. Rabbi Shimon Elazar Omer, Rabbi Shimon Elazar has an eitzah, even if she doesn't want to accept, there's also a way how to speed up the process. How does he do that? He can forcibly make her into a shifcha knanis. Here, Rabbi Shimon Elazar says she doesn't have to agree. This is what the Gemara is pointing at. That Rabbi Shimon Elazar says that she doesn't have to agree. He could immerse her against her will to become a shifcha knanis, and then also he could again immerse her in order to become freed. There's two stages. One is to become a shifcha knanis, then it's to become freed. And it seems both of them he's doing against her will. He doesn't ask any questions, and then also he'll be mutter. I don't understand this because this have a question which I wasn't able to answer. That when he's going to do this process against her will, but now she becomes a regular Jew, so he can't anymore force her to have relations. If she wants to marry him, good. If not, not. If he's forcing her through the whole process, I don't see why she's going to want to agree. If she wants to agree, she could do like the Rabbanan say, that she could agree and become a Jew. So now that he's forcing her to become a shifcha knanis, then he's forcing her to become free, which means now she's a regular Jewish woman. I don't see how he could force her anymore to have relations. She's a regular Jewish woman. He has to marry her if she wants to marry him. So I don't get it. But anyway, one point you do see is that Rabbi Shimon Elazar says that he could force upon her the slavery, and he could force upon her the freedom. You don't need any agreement. The Rabbanan seem to argue, since Rabbanan don't give that option, they just say that the way to speed up the 30-day process would only be if she would become a Jew, a Gioris, but they don't have this option of forcibly making her a shifcha knanis and then forcibly freeing her. So then that's the machlokis. The more found the machlokis that according to Rabbanan, this whole process of slavery is only if she wants, Eva Kanani, shifcha knanis if she wants. And the Rabbi Shimon Elazar says he doesn't have to agree. So he found out machlokis. He could say that's pshat in the machlokis that our Brisa said that Evan Meshachar also has to be makabel mitzvahs. That goes according to Rabbanan, and the Brisa that says that Evan Meshachar does not have to be makabel goes according to Rabbi Shimon Elazar. He could do it against his will. So before the Gemara goes further, the Gemara is asked a kasha about 15, 20 lines later. The Gemara is asked a kasha maskeflar papa, but till we get there, the Gemara first explains. I could put this in parentheses if you want. The Gemara is going to explain now the reasons of each one, with the drasha, which each one gets it from. Do they have to agree to become a shivcha? Just to point out, there's something a bit. I think it's a necessary point over here, but I don't. Also, not 100% clear yet. Let me just get the masked flora up over here. I'm sorry, I just want to. Yeah, that this is going to be a side point of what the drashas are. Just to point out, there are 2 points we're going through. One is make them into a slave. One is to make a slave is one point. Another point is from the slavery to become liberated and to become a Jew. Those are 2 steps. And the Gemara seems to put it all together. That according to Rabbi Shimon Elazar, you could do both of them against the will and make them a Jew. If you do it in 2 stages, first you make them into a slave, then you free him, and he becomes a regular Jew. And the Rabbanan seem to say that he has to agree. Could be asked to agree on both stages. He has to agree to become a slave, Eved Kanani, and he has to agree maybe to become a Jew afterwards if he wants to get free. But we'll get to that maybe as we see the Amud Beis. But so far, the Gemara seems to lump it together. Oh, yes.
Last time I have a note on the side here printed that in Amud Beis in Indian, even if she accepts upon herself, Kibla Matfila Mutter Miyad, means that in her pirish Shemuta Lovayah Miyad, the Habina Laham from Gimel Chadoshim.
Yeah, it's only about the 3 months. What happens in the 3 months, right? She might be carrying a son from
I
a
guess the mission of her test.
Okay, that's a kasha. It's a good kasha. The kasha is that every time if he's going to marry somebody, a Gioris, whatever, it has to be that he has to know that she's not pregnant from a previous man. So they have to wait 3 months. Here it doesn't say that. It's a nice kasha. I don't know the answer. Before the Gemara goes further, goes to the Darshan of Psukim, that you could say that the slavery could be against his will, or it has to be with his consent. Of course, slavery with his consent doesn't mean that he has to work only if he agrees. The working part, that could be against his will. You bought him. But the fact to make him into a status of an Eved, don't forget that Eved Kanani is not just the working. It means there's a status that Eved Kanani is chayiv and mitzvahs like a woman, which means he's really half a Jew. So that part, he's chayiv in Shabbos like a regular Jew, and I can all the laws say, and the mitzvahs say she has lows my grandma. So that's status, like you say in the morning, shlo sani goy, shlo sani yavish, shlo sani isha. Eved is a status. So Agmar is talking about the status of becoming this half Jew called an Eved. Does that have to be with his consent or not? Amar Rava, my time with the Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Where does he get that? It's allowed to be against his will. You can make him an Eved against his will. You can make him free against his will. Of course, this is a drasha. It's talking about Korban Pesach, and it says, in order to eat the Korban Pesach, the Eved has to be circumcised. But the Gemara is making a drasha. It says Eved ish, Kol Eved ish. So the Pashut means the slave of any man. So you have to circumcise him in order to eat the Korban Pesach. But the Gemara is bothered by the word ish. You could have said, Kol Eved, Miknas Kesef. What does it say, Eved ish? What does Eved ish mean? The slave of a man. How about the slave of a woman is different? There's no difference between if the owner is a man or a woman. Eved ish or Eved isha, of course, it doesn't mean that. So what is the Eved ish coming to teach you? Ella Eved ish atamol ba'al kocho bi'atamol ben ish. So the Gemara is, the way Rashi explains, according to one shot, Eved ish is not dashing the Eved of an ish, but the Eved who is an ish, the Eved who's an adult, the Eved who's an adult, not a minor. So an Eved ish, even though he's an adult, still you could circumcise him against his will, but not so by a ben ish. If he'd be a regular man, a Jew, that's an adult, so then you can't circumcise him against his will. It means he has to consent. But as far as an avdus, you could circumcise him even against his will. So this is the drasha that Reb Shimon ben Elazar learns, that you can circumcise the Eved against his will. Rabbanan, because the person says a malto so circumcised. It sounds like you don't ask him questions. You do what you want to do. So that means that an Eved, you're allowed to circumcise him against his will. Rabbanan don't hold it that. They don't hold it as drasha. Rashi says it's not really a drasha yet. It's just saying he doesn't hold it as drasha. On the contrary, he's going to say that an Eved ish also, even an Eved also, you have to dafka circumcise him if he agrees. So where did he get it from? What did he do with the pasuk? Different drasha altogether. There's a question: when you free a Eved Knani, does he also have to have a get shechur? Get shechur means a document that's going to halachically liberate him. He does say, "I disown him." Is that enough? When you disown him, so you're disowning the monetary value that you own in him. The master owns his slave. The monetary, he owns the value. He owns him like he owns a donkey. He owns a slave. The person is also, and that is also the din that he has a status of an Eved. He has a status of Eved Knani, and now if he's going to get freed, he's going to become a Jew. So the question is, you have to have both of them. You have to free the money and then also to free the halachic status, or is it enough just to free the money and automatically the status goes off? So that's what Shmuel said. If you disown your slave, so he goes free and becomes a Jew, and you don't have to give him a document in order to free him of his halachic status. He becomes automatically, from Eved Knani, he becomes a Jew. Why is that? The same problem that the word Evedish doesn't make sense. It doesn't mean dafka the slave of a man, a slave of a woman is the same din. So what do you learn out from here? Evedish means the Eved of somebody. He has to be somebody's Eved. Why is that? Because the status of the halachic Eved is only if there's some monetary value, monetary ownership over him. But if he's not the slave of a somebody, then there's no such status of an Eved. So as soon as you free the money part, you just say, I'm disowning you. I don't know the money. You have no boss over you anymore. So all automatically the status of Eved also goes off. All the more uses this.
What he's saying is, of course, he's doing it in front of Aiden.
He's doing what?
He's freeing the guy in front of Aiden.
Oh, I don't know. Why? Maybe the Edom is only going to be in order to make sure that the hefker is a hefker, but it doesn't have to do with halachic. It's not like a get or a kedushin that has to be a chalos. That's his chiddush. That you don't need a chalos. You just need that he shouldn't be owned. Once he's not owned, then automatically the status changes also.
But if he doesn't have any documentation.
Oh, that's going to be only for the proof. You want to know if he has to bring proof. Okay, that's another question. How to prove it, but does it happen? Does it take effect? So the chiddush is it doesn't need a get shikra. That if he disowns him and the money, that he doesn't have any owner, any boss over him anymore, so then automatically the status of Eved goes off and becomes a Jew. So this is not our subject, but this is just to say what do I want to do with the pasuk of Eved Ish. They have to use the pasuk of Eved Ish. But back to the beginning, what do we have over here? That Reb Shimon ben Elazar holds that the pasuk Eved Ish tells you that you're allowed to circumcise him against his will. So what did the Gemara find? Who said all this? I forgot who said it. Somebody found it as a machlokes over here. That was Rav Sheshes. So Sheshes said that in order to reconcile the contradiction, does the Eved, when he's getting free, does he have to consent to be mekabel the mitzvahs? He had a machlokes in the brisa, the contradiction in the brisa. Our brisa seem to say yes, and the other brisa says no. So he says it's a machlokes. I found that Shimon ben Elazar holds that the slavery, the Gemara seems to say that both the slavery and the emancipation, like they said, that you could do both stages of Shimon ben Elazar says you could do against his will, so you don't have to ask him any questions. The Rabbanan, you do have to. The Rabbanan really talking about over there, maybe about making him into a slave, but the Gemara says also, according to them, the freedom also to make him the next stage also has to be with his consent. So we're going to have a machlokes if the Eved has to consent to mitzvahs when you're freeing him. That's what Rav Sheshes said so far. And now about 10, 15 lines down, the Papa is saying, no, not true. That there's no machlokes over here. Everybody would hold that from going to an Eved to freedom, you don't find that the Rabbanan say you can't say that you have to have a Kabbalah again. We just spoke about a Yefas Torah. The Gemara seems to differentiate between a Yefas Torah and an Eved, but what it seems to be happening is difference between the first stage, becoming a Goy into an Eved, which is what you have to do by Yefas Torah. Yefas Torah was a regular Goya. And now you're going to make one stage to make into an Eved, and this is the second stage of making the Eved free. There are two stages, making a Goy into a slave, making a slave into a Jew. So even though you find that the first stage does have to have acceptance, according to Rabbanan, but Shimon says even that doesn't have to have acceptance. Both stages could be Bal Kochel. The Rabbanan say that the first stage has to be with consent, but you don't see that the second stage has to be with consent. And here we're talking about the second stage. Here our Bryce was talking about when you're immersing him, in order to make him an Eved Meshachar, doesn't have to have consent. So Papa is attacking and saying, you don't find that the Rabbanan say that either. They just say that in the first stage, to make him from a Goy into an Eved, that you have to have his consent. But you don't see that they hold that the second stage from an Eved to freedom has to have consent, and that he says does not have to. The Gemara doesn't say the reason to be fairish. Why? The Rambam seems to say the reason is because he accepted already before. Not because, the Gemara talks about Yishayach mitzvahs, because he's in mitzvahs category already, so then he doesn't have to accept the further stage. The Rambam seems to say because he was Makabal already the mitzvahs the first time, that's why he doesn't have to have an acceptance anymore. I would say the Pshat according to the Rambam would be that he has to know that when he's accepting the mitzvahs as to become an Eved, it always has the potential, it's already included, built-in potential that he might become freed, and then he's going to have all more mitzvahs, and he accepted that already also.
It's a different sheet from Rav Shimon ben Elazar.
Right, Rav Shimon ben Elazar holds not everything. He could do both stages against his will, like you said. You could put him into the mikvah to become an Eved, and then right away put him into the mikvah to become freed. You don't have to ask any questions. But the Rabbanan say that the first stage does have to have consent in order to become an Eved, but the second stage you don't have to have any more Kabbalah's mitzvahs. And the Rambam seems to say because he already accepted it already, and therefore, and now he brings also a proof to Tanya. He's going to bring a proof to this also that according to Rabbanan also, you don't need consent for the second stage. The Tanya, he's going to have to go back to reconcile the Brises. One Bryce said that you do have to have his consent. That was our Bryce we started off with. But before we get to it, the Gemara has a Bryce to back up this point. It says in the Bryce, that's the Bryce that the Gemara is bringing. Maybe we'll just try to highlight that. That's the words of the Bryce. A ger has to be a couple of mitzvahs, and also if you buy a slave from a goy, also he has to be a couple of mitzvahs. It seems here to become an eved. That's what the word seems to say. To become an eved, he bought an eved from a goy, he has to be a couple of mitzvahs. And the diak is if you buy a slave from a Jew, he wouldn't have to be a couple of mitzvahs. Now he's already a slave. I'm a little confused with the Bryce. I'm just going to try to read the words, but I don't have full clarity. And the one wants to know who's this Bryce. The Bryce says a ger, and buying an eved from a goy has to be Mekabel mitzvahs. Now it's not Rav Shimon ben Elazar, because Rav Shimon ben Elazar holds that an eved doesn't have to. You force him. You force him to become a slave. Force him to be freed. Yeah, Rav Shimon ben Elazar. It can't be Rav Shimon ben Elazar talking, because he holds that you could force him. Doesn't make a difference even if you're buying from a goy. You can make him into an eved Kanani against his will. So who's talking? Allah, Rabbanan. Rabbanan are talking, and even they say that there's difference between buying an eved from a goy or buying an eved from a Jew. But lokech is Yisrael and tzarich lekabel. Why not? Here the Gemara sees that he is something about that he already was chayv in mitzvahs. So where was he chayv in mitzvahs? I don't get exactly what the Gemara means to say. By the first Jew, he bought an eved from a Jew. What did the first Jew do? Did the first Jew make him into an eved? He made him into an eved. Didn't make him into an eved. I'm not sure what the Gemara sees from buying an eved, and he's still an eved. I'm not freeing him. It doesn't say that I'm freeing him. I don't think it says I'm freeing him, but it says that I bought a slave from a Jew. So why should you have to have any new stage? It's the same status as before. Whatever it was, it continues to be. I'm not sure what the Gemara sees in this brisa, but it wants to say that you see that the second stage, l'chorah means the second stage, or if he's been, maybe the pshat is going to be since he's been by a Jew, so he knows more about mitzvahs already, shaykh and mitzvahs, even though he's not mechuyev. I'm not sure. I don't grasp the Gemara where the Gemara sees that he's going from the stage of slavery to freedom. That's the what we're looking for. The first stage from a goy into slavery, that was saying that Rabbanan say you do need acceptance. But the second stage of slavery to freedom, that the Gemara wants to say you don't need him to accept again. And the Gemara sees it somehow in this brisa, which I didn't get clarity what the Gemara sees in this brisa. But if we take it as a given, let's continue. The Gemara comes out that even everyone's masking by the second stage from slavery to freedom, you don't need acceptance. You can do it without accepting. So the kasha is our brisa said that was the whole kasha in the beginning. Our brisa seems to say the whole story that it says by us the protocol of gerus, it ended off so too by Eved Meshachar, which sounded like he also has to be Mekabel Mitzvahs again. And that was the whole concept because the Bryce says you don't have to. And now he's saying that nobody holds you have to, not Rab Shimon Elazar, not Rabbanan. So we're stuck. The answer is Kitanya Hila in Tefillah. That's not talking about accepting the mitzvahs, just the fact that he has to immerse himself again. If you go back to the Brisa, it said both of them together. We thought it's going on the whole package deal, that he has to accept the mitzvahs in the mikvah. Now we're saying no, only a ger has to accept the mitzvahs in the mikvah, but the Eved Meshukva doesn't have to because he already accepted the mitzvahs when he became an Eved Kanani. For the second stage, you don't need acceptance of the mitzvahs. You do need immersion again, a second immersion. That's the end of that sugya. And just to sum it up, an Eved Kanani, when you make him into an Eved, can you do it against his will? Machlokis. And we're going to pass, and I think that you can't. Dafka with his consent. Like the Rabbanan, I'll take him. So you can make, we're going to see a number of days. What do you do if the Eved says, I don't want to become Eved Kanani? You bought me, like I'm bought, monetarily you own me, I have to work for you, but I don't want to be this half Jew. I want to remain not being Jewish. What do you do then? But according to Rabbi Shimon Elazar, you could force him, you put him into the mikveh and say, you chayiv mitzvahs, like an Eved, like a Eved Kanani. And Rabbi Shimon Elazar, the second stage, yeah, you can force him also. And the Gemara comes out that even according to Rabbanan, once he became an Eved Kanani willingly, so the second stage to make him freed and to a full Jew, you don't have to ask him again, you don't have to have Kabbalah's mitzvahs, and the Rambam seems to say because he accepted it already when he accepted the first time. Once the Gemara brought down the dinner of Yifas Torah, so the Gemara goes into some details over there. That's not our subject, but the Gemara goes into the dinner of Yifas Torah. Tevila Tanya, I made a mistake. My period is in the wrong place. Just to ignore that period. It should have been after the next word. Okay, that's where I belong. Okay. It says in the waiting period that in order to have relations with the Yifas Torah, so it says that she should shave her head and make her fingernails. What does it mean to make her fingernails? What does that mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? So it's machlokes. It means, like you say, a hairdo, right? A hairdo. What does it mean hairdo? To do the hair. What do you do to it? It doesn't say. It's here. There's a nail do to make the nails. A nail. So what does that mean? That's the question. What does it mean? So Rabbi Lezer Omer. Here's the machlokes. Rabbi Lezer Omer takutz.
Manicure the feet.
Rabbi Lezer Omer takutz. Rabbi Kiva Omer takutz. Mamash the opposite pshatim. What does it mean? According to Rabbi Lezer, it means she should cut her fingernails also. She should cut her hair and cut her nails. Rabbi Kiva with the opposite, takva. She should let her nails grow long. So the Gemara understands that letting nails grow long is considered disgusting.
Right.
Now it could be nowadays the ladies do it, but even today they file it, they make it the way they want to. Exactly, you just let it grow long stem. That's considered disgusting. And to cut it means you're cutting it. That's not disgusting. But by the hair, kilchas for sure, that's disgusting. To shave her head, that's disgusting. To have long hair would be beautiful. And now it says that she should shave her head and to make her nails. So Beleza says he should cut her nails, which that's not disgusting. So she's shaving her head, which is disgusting, and then to make her nails, cut her nails is considered good. And Rashi says according to that, it's going to be exercise. We don't know why. According to Bakiva, Tagdil means that she should be menavel. She should make her fingernails disgusting also, both to have a shaven head and long nails.
Well, depends on the minhag of the day.
No, so I'm saying that even I think always nowadays also just to have long nails without filing them correctly, it's also going to be disgusting. Anyway, the first one says the drush of each one. The pasuk says to do something to both. It says something to the head and something to the nails. So since the first one says openly to cut it, so this one also means to cut the hair and cut the nails. And we don't look if it's disgusting or not. That's not the point. The hekesh, the comparison is going to be to do the same act. Kiva Omer know that the comparison is going to be that it should be disgusting. You're right. The both of them say to do something. What do you do? That's like by cutting the hair means in order to make her disgusting. So too, do to the nails what's going to be disgusting. What's that? To let it grow long. The Gemara does bring the Brisa brings a support to Rabbi Lezer that it means to cut, not like a bakiva, not to let it grow long, because it says in the pasuk, "Mfibosh has been shown Yovad Lekras HaMelech Lo Asar Raglav Lo Asas Famo." But it's talking about after the rebellion of Avshalom. So it says Mephibosheth didn't come along with David had to run away, and Mephibosheth didn't come along. Over there, the case was that Siba had his slave had fooled him and didn't take him along. He was lame. Anyway, it says that he came towards the king and he had shown that he was in mourning. Means that, and he says he was in mourning because from the time that David had to run away, so he was in mourning that David lost the kingdom. And it says Lo Asa Raglav Lo Asas Famo. He didn't pedicure. Rashi says Lo Asa Raglav. He didn't cut the nails of his toes. And Asa Sfamo, he didn't cut his mustache. So over there, the word Asa Raglav, Asa Sfamo, both of them mean to cut. That's the proof to Rabbi Lezer that says Asa, Siponem means also to cut. So we had a machlokis that said Ma'asiyah Havara. So that was a machlokis of Akiva and Rabbi Lezer Pshat in the pasuk by the Fastoa, and each one said what the drasha is. Both of them say it's comparable to the here, but the question is in what way. Havara means to remove it, right? And the Gemara brings the Brisa brings a proof to Rabbi Lezer, or Raya to Rabbi Lezer, that it means to cut. That even though it's not disgusting to cut the nails, but for some Rashi says Gzeras Akasi. Okay, next subject about Fastoa. Last bottom line. Give her 30 days to cry over her father and mother. Who's that? Who's the father and mother? Her literal father and mother. That she was in the school. She was born to Avodah Zarah, and now she's being torn away from Avodah Zarah. So give her a month to emotionally get over it. That she's not anymore connected either to her parents, according to Avodah Zarah, or to Avodah Zarah, according to Rabbi Akiva. Where do you see that Avodah Zarah is called the father and the mother? That the Goyim, when they serve Avodah Zarah, they say to the piece of wood, "You're my father," and to the stone that you bore me. So you see that Avodah Zarah is called the father and the mother. So far, it doesn't seem to be have any halachic kind of difference. According to the first issue about cutting the hair, cutting the nails, that was the question. What do you do? Halacha. Here, there seems to be a rayon, like what's pshat in the pasuk, but not that there's any halachic difference. Taisus talks about maybe they could find some kind of halachic difference if she has no father or mother, something like that. That might be a machlokis if you have to wait 30 days or not. Taisus suggests maybe there's going to be a halacha nafkamina halacha also. But the pasuk in the Gemara is just saying what pshat in the pasuk is, not that there's any nafkamina halacha. And the pasuk continues. You have to wait. Yerach Yomim. How long is Yerach Yomim? So we would say a moon of days. That means 30 days. Yerach Shloshim Yom. That's the Pashup Shat, and that's what you're asking. But Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer Tishim Yom. That it has to be a 90-day wait. How do you get that? It's a drash. It's not a Pashup Shat. Yerach Shloshim Yomim Shloshim. Yerach Haken is another Shloshim. It says that you wait. It could have said Yerach alone. It says Yerach Yomim. So that means again another 30 days. Then it says V'ach Haken, and then afterwards, so V'ach Haken is coming to tell you another 30 days. And the more asked on that, see, also altogether 9, 30, 30, and 30. Maybe say a little different question. If you want to dash like that, then you should say Yarech is 30, Yomim is 30, and then it says Vachakain, the sum total of whatever you had till now. If you had already 60 days, maybe wait another 60 days, altogether 120. That's the kasha according to Reb Shimon Elazar. How he doesn't dash a little different. Kasha, that's the kasha of Reb Shimon Elazar. But we don't pass like that anyway. We pass like Tanakama that only 30 days. You wait 30 days. So okay, all these issues came out as a side issue since we mentioned about the Yefas Torah in our discussion. So we brought in a couple of more issues about Yefas Torah. One about the first thing we brought about Yefas Torah was their way to speed up the process. There's a way to get relations before 30 days. We spoke about if she wants to be Megayer or to be Megayer her Baal Kocha. But I've brought 3 more subjects. One is about what does it mean Asasa Siparneha. One is about Uzavia Besima, and the third one is what's called Yerach Yomim. Now we go back to our subject about Eved Kanani. So we know that Eved Kanani is a status, and we came out according to Rabbanan, and you can't do it about Kocho. You have to have his consent. So you bought a slave, a goy, and now he's your slave. And now the question is to make him to the status of Eved Kanani, and you have to have his consent. What if he doesn't consent? That's the question. According to Reb Shimon ben Elazar, you just put him into the mikvah Baal Koch and he becomes an Eved. But according to Rabbanan, you can't. So what do you do if Eved doesn't consent? Maybe we could try if it's quiet outside already. Should we try? If it's
Yeah.
Tana Rabbana. Mekayim we're on them. What?
He is buying an
A goy, yeah.
So the cherry owns them, not stuck in that.
He owns them, yeah.
And there's a din that you buy a non-Jew who becomes your
Yes, but that question is halachic status. We're not talking about if he has to work for him. He has to work for him the same way that you bought him. He has to work for him. But now the question is, he gets a halachic status. It's not just working. Now is he chayiv in Shabbos? Is he chayiv to keep Shabbos now? Does he have the halachic status called the Eved Kanani? We're not talking about. There's a good point of Elazar's book. I'm not talking about the monetary point. Of course, he owns him monetarily, and he has to work for him, and he has to do what he says. But that's not the point. The one point is, does he get a halachic status called Eved Kanani? That he's chayiv in mitzvahs. His chayiv mitzvahs means that he's chayiv in all mitzvahs lo saseh, and his chayiv mitzvahs saseh shelo man groma. He has to eat matzah on Pesach, like he has to eat korban Pesach. He has to keep Shabbos. He's not allowed to wear shatnez. Like he's a Jew. He's a half a Jew. He's not chayiv mitzvahs saseh shelo groma. But that whole status of being an Eved Kanani, how do you make that? So according to Reb Shimon Elazar, you could force him. According to Rabbanan, you can't. And now the question, you only have to ask him. You ask him, do you want to be Eved Kanani or not? And he says no. Now what do you do? Rabbi Shmuel says there's such a thing as owning a slave. That's not Eved Kanani. So you ask him if he wants to, and he says no. But then he's going to be your slave. That's not. He's a goyish slave. He has a choice to be Eved Kanani. Then he's going to go circumcised and mikvah, and he's almost half a Jew. And if he doesn't, so okay, so he'll be a goyish slave. There's such an option also. But you're not allowed to keep him.
Oh,
You can't. If Kiva says you can't, you tell him you want to become Eved Kanani. Good. If not, can't keep you. We'll see a few exceptions to the rule, but so far you can't keep any stuff. I'll sell you to the goyim. Then I have to sell you back. He might say, okay, I don't want to go back to the goyim, but he doesn't. You can't keep him if he doesn't want to become Eved Kanani. We'll see more. We'll see a couple of exceptions. Bishmol asked Rabbi Kiva, this is pasuk in Parshas Mishpatim, and it talks about Shabbos, and it says, let's say the pasuk over here, Parshas Mishpatim. It says, keep Shabbos, and your ox and donkey, and the Ben HaMascha, the son of your maidservant, should rest. And the Gemara says it doesn't mean a regular Eved, because there's be another pasuk that it says in Sefer Devarim. The Gemara is going to bring in a couple of lines over there. Man Yanuach, that's the coming down. The Man Yanuach of the Chavam Mascha Kamocha. That's in the Sersha Dibros of Parshas Vaschanan. Over there it says about Eved is Chayvin Shabbos. But here it says another pasuk in Afesh Ben HaMascha. What's that talking about? If he's Eved, there's another pasuk for it already. So Rabbi Shmuel wants to say he must be talking about that he's a guy. That even though he's a goy, but he can't work for you. Taisus explains that there's no din for a goy that he can't do. He has to keep Shabbos. He's a goy, but if he can't do malacha for you, you're a slave. Even though he's a goyish slave, he's not the status of Eved Kanani. Rabbi Shmuel says, according to me, there's a status of a goy who's your worker, that is your slave, but he's a goy. He's not Eved Kanani, and he's not allowed to work for you on Shabbos. Makes sense. But according to Rabbi Kiva, there's no such existence, no such thing. If he's Eved Kanani, of course he's chayv in Shabbos from the other pasuk. So why does the pasuk come to tell you over here that your slave is not allowed to work on Shabbos? Amalei, so Rabbi Kiva said, I'll give you a case, even according to me. It's talking about that I bought an Eved right before Shabbos, and I didn't have a chance to circumcise him yet and make him into an Eved. Really, I can't keep him. And if he doesn't agree, I have to get rid of him. But if he agrees, but I didn't have a chance because right before Shabbos, so then the first Shabbos, I'm not allowed, he's not allowed to work for me. He's a goy, and I didn't have a chance to make him into an Eved. But next Shabbos already, he's going to be already Eved Kanani. But this pasuk is only for the first time that happens. Right before Shabbos, he wasn't able to circumcise him, or there was no more, whatever the case was. Right before Shabbos. Okay, now the Gemara wants to know how come you say this. Everyone says this pasuk is talking about a goy. Everyone says it's talking about a goy, not an Eved Kanani. Why is that? Why do you think so? The Tanya is talking about the Eved Orel. It's talking about an uncircumcised Eved, a goy, a goyish Eved. Maybe it's a regular Eved Kanani. No, pasuk in Parshas Vaschanan, but it says Dibros over there. It says that your servant is chayv in Shabbos. That is chayv in Shabbos. This pasuk can say for Shmos by Mishpatim. How come it says again that your slave has to keep Shabbos? It's talking about an Orel who is a goy. How is he a goy? According to Rabbi Shmuel, you're allowed to have a goyish slave. According to Rabbi Kiva, in a case where he didn't have a chance yet to make him into an Eved Kanani. The pasuk continues over there about Ger. Not what's the pasuk is that again? That's the pasuk. The ger also, if he's a regular ger, you don't need a pasuk to say that the ger has to keep Shabbos. Of course, he's a full Jew. So the pasuk also over there must mean something special. Vager is a ger toshav. It means a ger toshav. What's a ger toshav? Again, it means a ger. A ger toshav means he's a goy. Just that he keeps the Shev mitzvahs b'nei Noach, and you're allowed to keep him in Eretz Yisrael. A ger, a goy, who doesn't keep the Shev mitzvahs, you're supposed to take him out of Eretz Yisrael. You're talking about a goy, Eved. Now we're talking about a ger. The pasuk is v'nafesh ben hamascha v'hager. This is a side subject. It comes in the pasuk v'hager. V'nafesh ben hamascha, like you just said, it's talking about ben hamascha, talking about Bishmol, a goyish slave. But now it says also v'hager. What's that? V'nafesh ben hamascha v'hager. When you learn the pasuk in the pasuk, Parshas Mishpatim, everyone should be bothered. It says that keep Shabbos, and your slave and ger should rest. What do you mean your ger? What does it mean your ger? If he's a ger, he's chayv mitzvah. So he doesn't have to have that your ger shouldn't do work. No special mitzvah of a ger to keep Shabbos. So he says a ger toshav. So it means a goy. So the Tosfos says that means that he's a guy who's in Eretz Yisrael he's keeping the Shem Mitzvah B'nai Noach, but he's not allowed to do work for you. On Shabbos, you can't tell him to do work for you. That's for sure. Ger is chayiv in all mitzvahs. Have a ger tzedek that is chayiv to keep Shabbos. So we finish up on Machlok. So we're keeping Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel says there's such a thing as keeping a goyish a slave, and he stays a goy, and he works for you. You own him, but he's a goy. But Akiva says no such thing. You can't keep him. The only case the Gemara found was that if he didn't have a chance to circumcise him before Shabbos, so for that first Shabbos, he's going to be a goyish slave. After that, you have to circumcise him or send him away. I'm maybe Shulman Levi. A new point now. We have to figure out what he's talking about. I'm maybe Shulman Levi. You bought a guy. You bought a slave from a guy, and he doesn't want to circumcise. He doesn't want to become a Kanani. You wait 12 months. They say maybe you allowed to wait 12 months. Adjustment period, maybe he's going to agree to become Eved Kanani. But after that, if he doesn't agree, then he's selling. He knows that.
These 12 months he works.
Yeah, for sure he works, right. And you're allowed to keep him. The point here is you're allowed to keep him. Not everyone wants to know if Rabbi Kiva agrees. Rabbi Kiva before said he can't keep him. Now he says you have a 12-month waiting period. So maybe Rabbi Kiva agrees. This seems to be against Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Shmuel seems to say no problem at all. Indefinitely you can keep him. So it must be a third shita. 12 months. What's the whole 12 months all about? So if Papa says no, it goes even according to Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva who says you can't keep a goy, but 12 months you could. If you didn't make a waiting, you didn't tell him, you have 12 months to decide. But if you told him that you have 12 months, and after that, if you don't agree, I'm going to sell you, so then you are allowed to. It means Rabbi Kiva also agrees to a 12-month waiting period. If it's indefinite, then you can't. But if you make it l'chatchila, it's only going to be 12 months, and if not, I'm going to sell you to the gun, then even Rabbi Kiva holds that you're allowed to. And that also is the halacha we're going to pass like Rabbi Kiva, that you give to Evan an ultimatum, you have 12 months to make a decision. If not, I'm going to sell you to the gun. Till now, we thought that Rabbi Kiva says not even one day. Now we're saying that if you told him that you have 12 months, then you could. The Gemara is a kasha that the Gemara didn't sound like that before, because before we asked the kasha, what is Rabbi Kiva going to do with the pasuk of being a feish ben Amoscha? And the Gemara found the teretz before Shabbos ben Hashmoshe, she bought an Eved, didn't have time to circumcise him. Very dochak teretz. It could have said that there's such a thing as a 12-month waiting period. If Rabbi Kiva holds that if you made up 12 months, you're allowed to wait 12 months, and the Gemara didn't have to have a dochak teretz about being a feish ben Amoscha. Of course, you have a 12-month case. That's the Gemara's kasha now. I said over this Gemara to Rav Zvid from Anado, and Amali, he asked me kasha. If that's so, that Kiva agrees you have a 12-month waiting period, if you made up, how come Rabbi Kiva had to answer that the pasuk is talking about the fancy case that right before Shabbos, he bought a go, you didn't have a chance. He could have said a pasuk of terrace that you have 12 months. He says, either terrace is good. He says another heketimsa. One case would have been where you made up to 12 months ultimatum, and then also you have 12 months, and it could be the whole year. And the other terrace, which is more dochak, is that if he bought ever, that he didn't have time to circumcise him. Also, a new point now. First white line. Shalach. Yeah, so then he's a guy, and you have a slave. But Kiva also agrees. And then that Shabbos, there's a din. He shouldn't do malacha for you on Shabbos.
He should do it for you, but he can do it for himself.
Yeah. And now, right. First white line, Shalach Rabbi Mishmei de Rabbi Loi. V'chol Rabose Amuli Mishmo. Rabbi seems to say that all my rabbis told me the name of Rabbi Loi. A new point, a new heter, that there's a kind of a guy that you're allowed to keep as an Eved if you bought him with the intention not to ever circumcise him. A new heter, mamish a new heter. Tell him we spoke about you're allowed to keep a goyish as slave. And Rabbi Kiva said no, Rabbi Shmuel said yes. He spoke about 12 months, maybe if you made up lachatchila. Now a new heter, that if you bought him with the intention to forever be a goyish slave, also you're allowed to. Again, the Gemara thinks that doesn't fit Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva says you're not allowed to have a goyish slave. This is against Rabbi Kiva. Maybe it's against Rabbi Shmuel also, but it's not Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva said, dear Rabbi Kiva, you're not allowed to keep a goyish slave. Rabbi Kiva could agree. Only if you didn't make up, what about a slave stamp? It says you have to make him even Eved Kanani or send him free, or give him 12 months. But if you brought him a chatchila that he should be a goyish slave, then Rabbi Kiva also could agree. So it comes out a lot of a terim. Even according to Rabbi Kiva, there are a lot of ways how you could keep a goyish slave. One is if you brought him a chatchila with the purpose of remaining a goyish slave. And the other one was that you say that I'm giving you 12 months more, 12 months, and then you're going to make a decision. And then you make the decision. But otherwise, then you have after 12 months, you can't keep him anymore.
Excuse me,
then-
what is the word asni?
Asni means a t'nai.
Tanai.
If you made it tonight, you made it tonight. And that's it. They made it amanas, like it says here, amanas. Amanas is a tonight. And the condition, shalom mula. Again, the more is the same kasha before, by the kasha of Yinafesh ben Amoscha, they push the terrorists. The more asked the kasha of Akiva, how could you ever have a case, Yinafesh ben Amoscha? Anyway, you're not allowed to have a goyish, you're not allowed to have a goyish slave. And he said that the Ochak terrorists, you bought him right before Shabbos. He should have said there's such a thing as having a goyish slave. If you bought him lachatchila, amanas, that he shouldn't circumcise. That's the more as kasha. I'm Rav Kana, Amita Lashmaitak, I made the Rav Zvid ben Arda. I said over this Gemara to Rav Zvid. And he told me, why did Rabbi Akiva say that a case where you bought it before Shabbos, you have a chance to circumcise him? He should have said this teretz, that if you bought Amanas came, you bought Chachila Amanas not to free him, not to make him a Eved Kanani, you're allowed to keep a goyish slave. So he says, even according to you, we said the other case also about 12 months also. If you told him that you have ultimatum of 12 months, also, why didn't he say that terrorist? Last time he said one of 2, 3 terusim. And altogether there are 3 terusim to the kasha. The Bishmol holds there's nothing at all. You can keep a goyish slave, no problem. If he wants to be a such a thing, if you're a goyish slave, you can be a goyish slave. Rabbi Akiva says no. But he himself, who says no, he says there are 3 aspects that could be. One is if you give ultimatum of 12 months. And one is if it happened before you didn't have a chance to circumcise him before Shabbos. So for that one Shabbos, he's a goyish slave. And also, if you made l'chatchila, I'm buying him amanas that he should remain a goyish slave. Also, Bakiba agrees that you can do that also. It sounds like you pass like a Bakiba with all these 3 cases. I mean, one case, the case of Erev Shabbos is not a case. It's just a Messias that he had no chance to circumcise him. But the other 2 are the halacha that if you tell him, I'm giving you 12 months, make a decision, or if you bought him l'chatchila, amanas to remain a goyish again, also. Yeah, then he can always remain a goyish, right? Otherwise, if not, then you wait 12 months and then you sell him to the goyim. Nugamar. Yosef, not so new, it's still connected to what I said before. Yosef, Rabbi Chanina, Bar Papi, Rabbi Ambi, Rabbi Yitzchak, Napocha, Kilo, Rabbi Yitzchak, Napocha. These are 3 Amoraim that were sitting on the porch of one of them, Rabbi Yitzchak, Napocha's porch. Yasmi, Vekamri, Irachas, Hoysa, Beretz Yisrael. They said there was a city in Eretz Yisrael, V'Larosa, Avodel, Amul, and the slaves over there didn't want to circumcise. I guess the Am Yisrael captured it, and the goyim over there became avodim, and they didn't want to circumcise to become Eved Kanani. They bore with them for 12 months. They tolerated it for 12 months, but then they didn't want to become avodim Kanani. They sold them back to the goyim. Come like we just said before, we said in the name of Yeshua ben Levi, and here the Gemara brings a brisa. I'm not sure why the Gemara didn't bring the brisa before. It says in Fresh brisa, Ki Atana the Tanya, Alakech Eved Ben Agoyim, V'Larasa Lamul, V'Gagali Moat Temas LaChodesh, Lo Mo Choza Mochel Agoyim. So that's the brisa before. He said Yeshua ben Levi. Now it's a brisa also, and that seems to be a halach. Even according to Rabbi Akiva, you do wait 12 months, and then if not, then you sell them to the goyim. Another consideration, not to keep him, that you can't keep a goyish slave in Eretz Yisrael. A different consideration in Eretz Yisrael. What's in Eretz Yisrael? Because over there you have Taurus, and the goyim are tamei, but the Brisa are not tamei. But the one of the goyim didn't observe. Eved not. Eved Kanani wouldn't become tamei. It means he can be careful in tumah, and he's like a Jew that he's careful not to become tamei. And if he is, he goes to the mikvah. But a goy, there's no way that a goy could be taught. A goy has been observed. So it's going to happen that he's going to be your slave, working in your house, and he's going to touch Taurus. He's going to make a tamei. So in Eretz Yisrael, don't keep a goyish slave at all. And then there's a security issue that we don't want goyim draying around in the Jewish neighborhoods. So when you have a slave who's a goy, if he's Eved Kanani, then he already identifies with us, and it's not shash he's going to do any kind of espionage. He's not going to give any information to the goyim. But if there's a goy, if he's really a goy, we don't want goyim that should be in the Ira Smuchal Asfar. Ira Smuchal Asfar means it's sitting next to the border, either in Israel or even if it's going to be in a Chusla, if it's going to be in a Jewish community. We don't want goyim draying around in the Jewish communities. It's the opposite of what they do nowadays. They're bringing goyish workers into the Jewish communities. The Gemara doesn't like that because they shouldn't have. Maybe at least they shouldn't bring them into a place where there might be some information that they should get. They shouldn't be able to drazach in a place where the security is going to be in danger because of these goyim. So you don't let, even in Chusla, it's in a city which is going to be in a place where it's a border, someplace where borders. The Gemara says even in Bavel, the Gemara says that the border city between the Jewish community and Goyim is considered a vulnerable danger, and therefore don't let Goyim to be. So you make him an Eber Kanani. If he doesn't want, then get rid of him. Tanya, and now this Gemara about Gerim over here. Tanya, Rabbi Hananya, Benosha, Rabbi Gamliel, Omer. Question: if they mark Gerim, Bisman Hazem, Meunin, Yisuin, Bonalain. How can we find that converts they're afflicted, they convert, and then they have problems? We would expect that if they converted, it is such a good thing, they should have a good life. And we see that the Gerim, a lot of times they have a difficult life. Why should that be? So first testimony says because when they were Goyim, they didn't keep the Shev Mitzvah B'nai Noach. So at that time, they were not considered, Rashi says that Hashem didn't punish them at that time because he didn't want to do them the favor of punishing them in this world, and then they're going to have more punishment. But once he became Jewish, so now Hashem wants to clean their record, so Hashem punishes them for what they did when they were Goyim, in order that they should come clean when they come to Olam Haba. Rabbi Yossi Yoma, that's not true. He's not going to be punished for the various that he did when he was a Goy. Gershon is a guy, Kaddish and Oladam. Once he's converted, he's considered a newborn, and he's not going to be held responsible for the various he did when he was a Goy. So that wouldn't be a good reason. He's not held responsible for those various. Because they don't know the mitzvahs well. It could be that the Jews also don't know the mitzvahs well, but they sometimes they grew up in a Jewish environment, so they know the mitzvahs better. But the ger comes out and he doesn't learn enough, so then he doesn't know the Tukkim mitzvahs. Then he's doing a lot of various once he becomes a ger. I don't know why this should be, but the Gemara says that maybe there are a lot of the game that convert is not because they love Hashem, but because they're scared of a punishment. I'm not sure why that should be. I think nowadays maybe it might be different. But here the Gemara says the reason why Gerim would be converted is because they're scared of the Gehenim, of the punishment. Then maybe that would be the Goyish Musag of what the Yirah Shemayim is. They only understand Gehenim, so they want to get out of Gehenim, and they found out that the Jewish way is the way to get out of Gehenim, but they're not doing it because of Ahavas Hashem. So that's the reason why they might be afflicted. The last reason the Gemara says is because they came, but they came too late. Why didn't they come earlier? I don't know why it's a kasha. I mean, if they realized it, it's kasha on all the guys. All the guys don't convert, but even the guys who do convert, so how come they didn't come earlier? How come they took so long to come? If they took long to come. I'm Rabbi Avov. We tell Rabbi Chanina, Ma'ikra, Yishalem Hashem Pa'olcha, Otim Maskotcha Shleima, Miyam Hashem Molokei Yisrael, Hashem Bos Lachsos Tachas Knapav. He talks about what Boaz was telling to Ruth, and he says that your reward you should have a full reward because you came to take shelter under Hashem. And the Rashi says the Gemara is that Rashi is because this is Hashem Bos that you came. It sounds like you came right away. The fact that she came right away, then she's going to get full schar. But if she would not have come right away, then she would have been maybe responsible for the fact that she didn't come right away. So the ger is held responsible. Why didn't come earlier? That's the end of the sugya. So more or less, just to sum up the halachas, we had a machlokes if to make a ger into an Eved Kanani, if you can do it against his will. And Rav Shimon they said yes, even the two stages, making him into an Eved, making him free. Both of them can be against his will. We pass like the Rabbanan. Because according to Rabbi Shmuel, he could remain always a goy, and he won't become Eved Kanani. According to Rabbi Kiva, if you gave him an ultimatum of 12 months, that's one way, or if you brought him lechatchila for the purpose of never going to be an Eved Kanani, you also can stay a goy. Otherwise, after 12 months, you have to send him away. The Gemara and Amar Aleph continued about the Fas Torah. To go back to the beginning of the sugya, that if there's such a thing as converting Bal Kocho, so then Rabbi Shimon also says, make her never Kanani, Shifcha Kanani, so make her free, and then she's a free woman right away. According to Rabbanan, if she wants to be Megai, the such thing is doing it against her will. And then there are a couple of drushes over here, Machlokas, when it says Asasas Siponef, it means to cut or it means to go along, and the Gemara seems to be noted that it means to cut. Avia Ima doesn't mean Avodah Zarah, doesn't mean literal parents. Machlokas that means 30 or 90, Akash maybe even 120, but the Maisa we passed that it means 30. And then we went through this Machlokas already about Rekiva and Rabbi Shmuel. Anything else we had over there afterwards? That not to keep an Eved Goy, not to keep a Goy in Eretz Yisrael to be working for you because he might have too much connection to the Taurus, he might make the Taurus Tomei, and in a place where there's security issues, so then don't keep a Goy either because he might give information to the Goy. And the last thing is, how come Gerim, we find them that they're afflicted? We would have thought they should have had a good life after they did such a good thing. So first, the Gemara is Machlokas if they're punished for the Averis that they did before. We pass like the of Yossi that says that they're not responsible for what they did before, and then they might not became a mitzvah. Maybe they do Mayira, and maybe because they took too long in order to convert. That's the koach.
But we don't pass them like this.
He passed like a Yossi.
Like that, when they don't
That
get
they're not responsible for Averis before. Once they're Magayas, then they're not responsible for what they did before. Right. That's the koach, everybody. Thank you.
Was
Welcome
the,
back.
when it said Smucha l'Saper, Saper is a city, it's a border.
As far as the border, as far as the border.
As far as it is a border, it's not close to the.
Yeah, close to the border, right.
I'm back in sync now, so
Okay. Good to see you. Good to have you back.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yes, yeah, our listeners listening to you.
Can you hear?
I hear you, yes.
Listen, there's a big flood in front of the bathroom. We stunk in the Ramban shul, you know?
And that's why I was 2 minutes late to share.
Okay, you know about it. Okay. that's
Yeah,
all.
thank you. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Well, tomorrow we're starting at 2 shares.
Whoever is on, to tomorrow, we should start regular, 11 to 12 is Daf Yomi, and 12 to 1 is the regular Shira, 12 to 12:55. That's a Shavua Tov and a Chodesh Tov, everybody.
Okay, good.
Chodesh Tov, Toda Rabah.
Thank you.